So that's sort of our housekeeping done. So I will welcome you to our Young Entrepreneurs Leaders Workshop. Thanks ever so much for joining us this afternoon. So my name's Georgina Greaves. I work for Derbyshire Environmental Studies Service, which is part of Derbyshire County Council. We were the project leads on this project. Mostly what we work on is we deliver outdoor educational visits and trips. We support on forest school development across the county. We run a wide range of heritage projects, all linked to the built and the natural environment of Derbyshire. We work really closely with the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site, of which this project was part. So this afternoon you'll be hearing from me. You'll be hearing from Ingrid, who's in the team as well. You'll be hearing from Sarah in the team, and Gwen is also with us, who works with us in the Environmental Studies Service. And Gwen also supports the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site team as well. So like I say, any issues at all, pop them in the chat, say hello. If you've got any questions, we'll try and deal with those as we go. And what we're going to do is, before we get going, this is the format of the session. What I wanted to sort of introduce to you first of all is hopefully you've picked up a little bit about what the Young Entrepreneurs Project was about. It was actually part of a project we've had running in the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site for the past 4 years. So it was the Great Place Scheme, of which there were lots of individual projects. Our project, the Young Entrepreneurs Project, is part of the Great Place Scheme. All of the projects are about sharing what a great place the World Heritage Site is, responding creatively, using arts and getting communities and young people and businesses to understand this special place and to engage with it. So for those of you who don't know, the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site is in Derbyshire. And it runs from, you've got a map here, it runs from Matlock Bath in the north, where Masson Mills is, through Cromford, down through Belper, Belper North Mill, down through Milford and Darley Abbey, Derby Alley Mills, and down to the Silk Mill in Derby, the new Museum of Making. So they were the world's first factories, textile factories, spinning and producing silk and cotton. Largely regarded as the world's first successful factories which used water power. But it doesn't just include the mills, it actually, the World Heritage Site includes the sort of wider communities, so the transport networks, the canals, the railways, the housing, the special buildings, and the really beautiful landscape that it sits within, which is still there and largely intact. So that's the place we're talking about. The project itself, what we're going to do through this session is we're going to take you through what we did on the Young Entrepreneurs Project, on the basis that you might like to run it in the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site. Some of you are from locations within that area. Some of you are from other areas and you might like to run it on your own great places. Okay, so what we've tried to do with this project now is, this is us handing it over to you to use as you would like. So you will get access to a teaching pack, which has got all of the instructions that you'll need to be able to run your own project. So it doesn't matter whether you're an artist or a site or a school or an organisation, you can approach it in your own way. The resources and the instructions on how to lead this will be provided to you, along with all of the presentations, the worksheets, the resources and everything else. They're yours. But what we've done, the team and I are all teachers and work with schools really closely, and we know how frustrating it is when you can't change stuff. So we've made them all available to you to just edit as you need to for your site and your organisation. So you can use the framework and the ideas that we've set up, but you can adapt them to your own site and your own needs and your own organisation. So hopefully we've done this as part of our Great Place Scheme, which is funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and Arts Council England, but you'll be able to run your own projects in the way that's right for you. So hopefully that makes sense. So that was just to give you a little bit of background. So that's sort of 1 and 2 sorted. I'm going to tell you first of all about how the project ran, and then we're going to actually do some of the activities. Now, we desperately wanted to do these with you on one of our brilliant mill sites up and down the valley, but we're going to do them virtually and we'll see how it goes. Okay, but that was just to give you a context of where we'd sat our project. We'll have a little break in the middle. We'll take you through some of the activities, having a little bit of a go. I'm a big believer in actually putting yourself in the situation of having a go at stuff to see how it feels, and you can work out then how it might work for your organisation. So that's what we're going to do. So the Young Entrepreneurs Project, we were conscious within the Derwent Valley Mills that actually we do less work with older young people. So this project was specifically targeted at 11 to 21-year-olds. We know we've got an amazing heritage. It's a site of really interesting creativity. Like I said, the world's first factories, factory production, manufacturing, making, inventing, creativity. And what we wanted to do was use that heritage of the past to try and inspire some our new sort of young entrepreneurs of the future to be creative. We wanted them to use art and creativity, but we also wanted them to use sort of different skills around sort of team building and confidence as well. So it was very cross-curricular. Some of the groups we worked with were very much looking at it as an employability skills and transferable skills. Some were very much embedded in the different art mediums that we used. But it was a very place-based response. So the place we were in was really important. And the idea was that it would form partnerships between educational settings, so schools and colleges, but also artists and creative practitioners and the actual heritage site themselves. And the idea was very much a real world project. So that was the sort of background. That's what we were aiming to do. And we divided it into 4 days. So each group that we worked with, and we worked with 5 different groups, had 4 day-long sessions. I'll talk to you in a little bit about how you might organise that differently, and there's some more guidance in the teaching pack that you'll get. But we did 4 sessions. So the first day was an introductory day that we did in the school or the college, and that was being young entrepreneurs. We did a site inspiration visit where they were taken out to the actual site that they'd chosen to visit, which was all funded by the Great Place Scheme. They had a production day where they actually made and manufactured things, and then they had a sales event at the end where they were pitching or selling their products. So that was the sort of framework that we used. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we did on each day. So the first day, we helped them to understand what a World Heritage Site was. The idea was that the great place that they were looking at, the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site, was basically the client. So the young people needed to understand the place that they were responding to, and they understood a little bit more about why it was a special place and what it was all about. We really focused in on that first day on team building and communication skills. Absolutely vital for the workplace, but absolutely vital for our young people as well. The young people formed small companies and they had different roles within that company, and we'll talk to you later about how we organised that. They found out what art medium they were going to work in. Now, for some of the groups, we went in advance and discussed with them what they would like to do, what art medium they wanted to do. So the special school that we worked with didn't have the opportunity to work with clay because they've got no firing facilities. So we worked with ceramics with them. Some of the others, it was kind of dictated by the course that they were on. So the graphic design students worked in graphics. We had a few surprises because we were approached with, this was an open offer to schools and colleges across Derbyshire. Some of them came forward and said, we want to work in digital media. At which point Ingrid and I, who were organising the project, went, brilliant, come on board, and then had a minor panic because we weren't digital experts, but we worked it out. So it doesn't really matter what art medium it is. I think the format that we've got now can be flexible. So if you wanted to work in photography, if you wanted to do performance, it can still work. We tried to give as much ownership as possible to the young people, so they chose which location within the World Heritage Site they wanted to go to. And we explained that they all had a £10 startup grant because we were super generous. So if they needed to buy things, they could buy stuff as well. The second day, their site inspiration visits, we took them to their site of their choice, and they did very much place-based activities there. They got to experience the site, they got to gather information, they did artistic activities, they did some market research, found out about you know, what would people want to buy on site? What is there available to buy on site? What are the prices? How many people are there? What sorts of people are there? And they had a chance to work with the heritage sites and the creative experts as well. The third day was the production day. So this was always a very, very busy day. So they were discussing in their companies and collaborating, deciding what they were designing and manufacturing, and they were actually creating it. Now, for some of the groups that we work with, this really sort of echoed the sort of heritage that they were looking at. Certainly the ones that were working in clay and ceramics and were doing screen printing, very much set up a very archaic and strut style factory system where everybody was doing a different stage and they were like sort of mass producing, and they were sort of drawing those analogies. For some of the other groups, they were working on it not just on one production day, but they were working on it as part of a wider project. So yeah, we had lovely days making stuff. And then we had a sales event, because we had different sorts of products and sort of art mediums. Some of them actually had market stalls and were selling their products and having to handle the money and work out the profits and the losses and all the rest of it. Some of them, we worked it slightly differently, where they actually had to present to their client. So they were presenting, each of the different companies of students were presenting to the heritage sites, maybe the shop manager on the artists, and they were almost doing it like a Dragon's Den style pitch. So they were trying to get people to sort of say, right, we're going to, you know, choose our design, choose our product, stock our product. So we did it that way for them. Some did a bit of a combination of both. So it was pretty adaptable. So those were the 4 days. We're going to go through what they actually sort of how they looked in practice and have a go at some of the activities as well. So is everybody okay so far? Good. Hope so. Not too much going on in the chat so far. If you've got any questions, do pop them in the. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Who were they selling to?
So it very much depended on the group that we're working with. So on the pictures that you can see on screen here, so this group down here actually worked at Cromford Mills, and they were selling to members of the general public. So they had to actually advertise an event as well. They had to invite people along, and it was when the mill yard was back in the days when things used to be open. So people could come along and actually attend their market stalls. There was an awful lot of roll up going on and come along. This group here from Alfreton Park Special School, they actually incorporated their selling into their school fair. So they were having a school fair at Christmas time, and they decided to sell their products at that. So it was this group here, they did it towards the end of their term, and they decided they wanted to raise funds for partly for a charity and partly for an end of term do. So that's what they were doing. So it was generally either to the general public or, like I say, presenting to people. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so just a few things to consider if you're leading your own project, and I'm going to plant these seeds now, but you can come back to us on this when we get into the sort of discussion sessions. So if you're coming from a sort of school college background, or you're a site that's thinking you might run this, think about which group you might want to work with. So some of them chose sort of a specific subject area and sat it within the art curriculum. Some decided they were going to use it with children who were perhaps not accessing the curriculum particularly well at the moment. So you can choose to use it with just a regular class, or you could choose to use it with a specific group. So you'd need to think before you started, who are you going to target here? The timing and organisation of the days, we did it as 4 full days. You don't have to. You could break it into sort of doing an hour a week as part of school curriculum. You could do it as a summer school, back to back within a week. You could do it as a drop timetable week and do it sort of as an enrichment session. There are ways of adapting it to however it suits you. Like I've already mentioned a little bit about which art medium you might want to use. Got a little bit of sound interference there. Does somebody want to just pop their mic on mute a second? There we go. Lovely, thank you. So yeah, you might want to try and find an artist to support you. We found that really, really beneficial. We actually went for artists who have also got a business practice as well, because we wanted to get that sort of business practice element in as well. But you could decide that in advance. You could allow your children and your students to decide that. And then which heritage site? It might be, actually, we're working at this one because that's the one that I work at. Or you could allow them a choice. We have a wealth of riches in the Derwent Valley Mills. There's so many different sites we could have gone to. That what we actually did was we allowed enough time for the students to choose where we were going to go and then organise the trip. So it's just about how you time it. There's lots more guidance about that in the learners pack. Okay, so I'm going to hand you over to Ingrid, who's going to sort of tell us a little bit more about some of the team building activities that we did.
Okay, so we hadn't worked with any of the students before. We were obviously new to them, like you may well be, and the team building sort of communication activities were great from our point of view as a way of getting to know the students a little bit better. We were, you know, setting ourselves up to 4 days of working with them. So from our point of view, it was a really worthwhile time of the day, and it did take up quite a little bit of time in the morning. It was great for the students as well. As George said, team building and communication wasn't just for this project, but for employability, for personal development, for growth. And it was a way of getting the students working with people that they hadn't worked with before. Some of the groups that we worked with, they had amalgamated 2 courses, for example. So at Chesterfield College, we were working with 2 digital groups, but they were both on separate courses and the students had never met each other before. But we were expecting them to run a company together and work together. So we really wanted to sort of delve deep a little bit into communication. In the teacher's pack, there's a few activities described, one with a helium stick and production manager games. They're both much larger games where you can do as a whole group or split into 2 halves. And I'm not going to talk to you about them too much now because they are in the pack. But we've just got a video to share with you. And I give the disclaimer here that this was done in lockdown with my 2 teenage daughters, hence the dressing gown and the dog scuttling around. And I gave them no information about what they were doing or why they were doing it. I just said, I just need you for 5 minutes. I need you to do a Lego challenge. And I set them off. So I think we should just play it, and then we'll talk through why it's a really, really good challenge for team building and communication in particular. So if you can play it, George.
Okay, so you both have the same set of Lego, they're identical. Ruby, you're going to be the design and maker. You need to choose between 3 and 5 pieces of Lego to make a model, and then you're going to describe it to Mabel and she's going to try and make the identical model. Off you go. Happy with your model?
Yeah.
Okay, describe it to Mabel. Remember, she can't see, you need to be clear.
So there's a long piece as the base.
Yeah.
And 2 pieces parallel the other side.
What 2 pieces?
A long piece and a short piece. with a chunky bit at the bottom, like the chunky piece.
Yeah.
And then on the top, on the left side, is a long piece which has got 2 rows of knobbly bits on it.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's more model.
Okay, so you've got 2 people that have, one person that's made the model, the other person that's told the other person, and the third person is the observer. So Lego models, if you could just hold them next to each other so you can see them.
Pretty bad.
So, Mabel, you followed instructions and occasionally you did ask, could you have asked more to understand what she was meaning?
I did say on the top. I just did put it on the top. I thought I did. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
One thing that I observed, Ruby, was that when you were saying, you said, get the long piece, get the short piece, you didn't use colour.
We don't have the same colour anyway.
For description, you do have the same colour, they're identical sets.
Really?
So you could have used the colour to help you with description. So you needed to be more descriptive, and Mabel, perhaps you needed to ask for more clarification. Anyway, well done, guys. Thank you.
So, yeah, I was going to retake that after I realised the dog was skitting around and everything else, and I thought, oh, I can refilm it. But I didn't want to, because that was a genuine 2 young people having a go, and you can see from the models they weren't great, and that really sort of demonstrated 2 things, and a good learning point for the students that we worked with was, one was the importance of verbal communication, and just because you tell somebody something and you know what you mean, it doesn't mean that the other person knows what you mean. So you need to be really clear. And equally, if somebody is asking you to do something and you're not quite sure about it, then you need to speak up. And they were the 2 sort of go-tos that we were saying throughout the whole topic is, you know, have you told everybody what's going on? Are you including everybody? Have you made it clear? Other people that weren't contributing, do you know what's happening? Have you asked? So we very much pulled out that communication was very much speaking and listening, and that activity worked really, really well. And you can have 3 people on it and then rotate them round, and you could have it where you can ask questions, you can have it where you can't ask questions. There's lots of different ways of interpreting it. But yeah, that was a favourite challenge, I think, of many on the day. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to just pass you on to, oh, there we go. I'm going to pass you on to Sarah, and we're going to do another sort of listening and communication activity. We found that this was an area that, like Ingrid said, need lots of developing. So another activity that's in the Learners Leaders Guide is the drawing a picture challenge, and Sarah is, so hopefully you got the instructions that you needed some paper and a pen somewhere near you. So now's your time to grab your paper and pen, and Sarah's going to take us through this challenge.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm looking at a black and white line drawing, and I'm going to describe it to you, and your challenge is to try and copy down what I can see in front of me. And I have to be honest, I've chosen quite a challenging one, so hopefully we'll get some good results. I'm only going to say each bit once, so listen carefully and we'll see what we come up with. So in the centre of your paper, with the right angle pointing towards the left-hand corner of your page, draw a right-angled triangle. Inside this triangle, draw an arc around the right angle. I can't see anyone, so I can't see if anyone's drawing. Okay, next, near the bottom of the long side of your triangle, draw a curved line spiralling up and away from the triangle. Towards each corner of the short side of the triangle, draw 2 short stems outwards and add a blob to the end of each one. Next, draw 2 3-pronged forks stemming away and downward from either side of near the top of your triangle. Okay, we're going to leave that triangle behind because next we're going to balance a smaller right angle triangle on the top corner of that original triangle, with the right angle pointing roughly towards the top left of your page. Okay, and then draw short stems inside the right angle. Draw 2 short stems inside the right angle. Next, draw an arch around the outside of each short side corner. Then draw a slightly larger arch around each one. Now shade in the bottom angle of that small triangle into a rough round shape. Just above this, add 2 short stalks on either side of the triangle. Okay, that's your last instruction. Does anybody want to hold up to the screen what they've drawn?
So if anybody wants to pop their screen on, if they're happy to do that and hold up what they've done.
Oh, I love Bobby's.
These look great. You see,
Sasha's is pretty close. And Ingrid, pretty close.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share with you Sarah's drawing. So that was what Sarah was describing. I don't think I would have managed that. I was there.
We've got some pretty good listeners in this group, George. That was pretty good.
Yeah, so that's speaking and listening. So in the pack, there's lots, like Ingrid had mentioned, there was also the helium stick challenge, balancing and trying to communicate and work together, and the production manager game, throwing a ball around. We also have included a couple of videos as well, which I'm just going to show you now, which was all about, we used different activities with different groups depending on what was most appropriate for them. But Ingrid and I found that this little video actually went down very well, again, about trying to emphasize that idea that when you're working together and when you're trying to be productive as a company, you have to speak and ask and listen. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second because I think I needed to include my audio. There we go. Has that come up okay? Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay, so these are some of the activities that we used within the first day. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you into how we actually introduced the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site to the participants. Most of the groups that we worked with hadn't visited before, weren't aware of what the site was, and they were going to be working and designing and making products inspired by the site. So what we needed to do was that we needed them to understand a little bit about the site and introduce it to them. So the presentation I'm going to share with you now, I'm going to whiz through it fairly quickly. The actual presentation is available to you to download if you wanted to use it to run a project in the Derwent Valley Mills. What I would say, if you're going to use it, if you're going to be using this sort of concept, this Young Entrepreneurs Framework from another site, is you will need something that introduces your site to the young people you're working with. So, what have all these places got in common? Anybody want to just put something in the chat about what they've all got in common, or if they know where any of them actually are? Let's give you a couple of seconds to type if there's anybody there. Notice Elizabeth has popped into the chat. Were the pupils given roles by the group leaders, or did they choose for themselves? They actually chose for themselves, and we'll explain to you in a little bit how we actually did that. So what have all those places got in common? Do we know where any of them are? A couple of seconds, a couple of people typing maybe. So
sorry, I don't have access to typing someone on mobile.
Okay, no problem.
They're all places of World Heritage Sites.
Fantastic. Okay, yep, they are all World Heritage Sites. They're all UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Okay, so what we did was we actually explained what a World Heritage Site is. So UNESCO make sure that all World Heritage Sites are of outstanding universal value to humanity, which basically is a fancy way of saying they're really special and valuable to everybody in the world, whether or not you're going to actually visit them or not. And UNESCO is a United Nations organisation, so it's an international organisation, which is the education, scientific and cultural organisation. And heritage is our legacy from the past, so it's things from the past that are still here today, but we actually want to preserve and protect them and hand them onto the future. They are irreplaceable if they are damaged or if they are destroyed. We cannot replace these places. They're sources of life and inspiration, and they belong to all of us. So they tell us about our past, they tell us about our planet, and they belong to all nations, no matter where they live. So there's different kinds of sites. So on this slide, we've actually got World Heritage Sites in the UK. So you can be a cultural site, and a cultural site is to do with buildings and people and ways of life and society. So an example of those would be the Derwent Valley Mills or Stonehenge in Avebury. You can also be a World Heritage Site which is inscribed because of its natural features, which is to do with landscapes and nature. So that would be the Jurassic Coast down in Dorset in East Devon, or the Virunga National Park in the Congo, which is protecting the mountain gorillas. You can also be a combination of both. So St Kilda in the UK would be an example where there are natural elements around the sort of wildlife and the birds, but there are also cultural elements in terms of the sort of heritage buildings and sort of monuments that are there as well. So we actually challenged the young people to, they had to imagine that they were going to do an Instagram post having visited a World Heritage Site. So they had to choose one that they quite fancied, and we had some of them doing an Instagram post. Other groups, we did this slightly differently. We actually got them to design a postcard as though they'd visited, and the instructions are available for both. And we gave them some pictures. Some of them went away and did a little bit more research and looked things up on the internet of different places and different World Heritage Sites. And it was trying to give them that concept that these are really important special heritage sites. So we had a little break in the presentation there while they did an activity. And then we sort of introduced the idea of them, because The Derwent Valley Mills in Derbyshire is on our doorstep. It's a really, really special place, but quite a lot of us perhaps don't regard it as on a par with the Taj Mahal and the pyramids. So we were trying to explain to them why this had been made a World Heritage Site. And it was to do with the fact that everything we wear, absolutely everything made in a factory, and how we live and work owes something to this part of the world. So everything that you're touching now, whether the computers that we're using, the chairs that we're sitting on, the clothes that we're wearing, were more than likely made in a factory using that sort of factory manufacturing system, which originated here. So how we live and how we work and the cities that we work in are all influenced by changes that started in the Derwent Valley Mills area. So we talked to them a little bit about what was it like before the mills came along. So back in the 1700s, people wore clothes and hose that were silk and cotton and wool. And it was basically one person, one thread, spinning it, weaving it, making it, all on a very, very small scale. But actually what happened with the changes that happened in the Derwent Valley were colossal, and it changed that forever. So the cotton would have been grown largely at this point. It would have been grown in South America, Brazil, the Caribbean, South America, largely on plantations that would have had enslaved workers on it. That would have been shipped over the Atlantic, would have landed in the ports and been brought by pack horse to the mills, where it would have been broken apart, carded, roved and spun into thread. And that's what the mills did. So down in Derby at the silk mill, John Lom took his ideas from Italy, and actually they were doing silk throwing and winding at the silk mill down in Derby in 1721. And inventions and entrepreneurship and creativity was inspiring this process all the way. So John Kay invented the flying shuttle, which basically meant that people could weave much faster. And that caused a bit of a problem, because it meant that the sort of demand for the yarn increased massively and the spinners couldn't keep up. So the spinning jenny machine helped a little bit, but it was hand operated and it was still a bit too slow. So around 1771, Richard Arkwright built his mills at Cromford, and he had his water frame. So he'd taken ideas from other people, adapted them and invented this machine that basically made cotton spinning fast and strong, and could meet demand. And that powered the mills at Cromford, and he worked with his partners Samuel Need and Jedediah Strutt, and actually became the sort of world's first really successful water-powered mills. He also sort of adapted that idea of the factory system, where each different stage was done by different people, and that's been copied throughout the world. It was sort of the heart of the Industrial Revolution. So there was changes around the machines, the power transmissions, the buildings that were built that never been buildings on that scale before. The production system and the people and how the labour was managed was really new in this area and changed things forever. So they were the first factories. They did use water power on a large scale for the first time, but that also changed sort of how we live our lives. They needed to attract workers. So they started to build workers' houses. Those workers needed entertainment, they needed pubs, they needed leisure facilities, they needed allotments to grow things in, they needed food production to change. And it also meant an expansion of the mills as well. So in 1783, Arkwright built his showcase mills at Masson Mills. Down in Belper, Jedediah Strutt was expanding massively and building the North Mill. There was a real problem in that the cotton mills were very prone to burning down. We're very lucky to still have any left, to be honest. They did tend to burn down quite a lot, wooden framed buildings. So there was inventions around Belper, where William Strutt actually designed the first sort of fireproof buildings and moved into iron framed buildings. And this was absolutely revolutionary. You could build bigger, taller, stronger, they wouldn't burn down, and it was actually the forerunners to the skyscrapers. So the fact that we've got skyscrapers and big buildings now that are metal framed is also down to the inventions and the creativity in the Derwent Valley Mills. So Jedediah built his mills, Different floor for cotton spinning processes, 34 frames on each floor, huge amount of threads being spun. And on the top floor on Sundays, they would have had a Sunday school as well, so the children could learn their sort of reading and writing and arithmetic. And it sort of expanded in Belfast, particularly a huge complex of mills with engineering, the weirs, the sluices, the bridges, the river gardens, and so on. I'm whizzing through this very quickly because I'm conscious that a lot of you actually know all this stuff. So there's a huge influence in the housing, in the leisure facilities, later on in building schools, river gardens, entertainment. And ultimately what happened was there were cheaper clothes, more people had sort of improved comfort, improved hygiene. The roads had to be developed and the canals for transporting goods, and the railways developed as well. And basically this system of manufacturing and making things was copied throughout the world. So it really changed how we live our lives. The interesting thing about the Derwent Valley Mills is that actually most of the big developments happened in other parts of the country. So our part of this story is almost suspended in time and is still intact in its very rural sort of natural landscape. So it's a really special place. You can't see these things together with the houses and the mills and the transport system and the landscape in place anywhere else in the world. So a really special place that we wanted our local young people to really take pride in. We really wanted them to understand what a special place it was and actually to take some pride and some inspiration from that, and hope that maybe they could be the future Jedediah Strutts and the future Richard Arkwrights, manufacturing, making, creating. So I'm going to pass you on to Ingrid again now, who's going to share with you how we actually got the groups to form their companies, because I know for those of you who regularly work with young people, if you ask them to get into groups, it doesn't always go so well. So I'll pass you on to Ingrid.
Okay, I think it's worth just pointing out that, you know, we really did have to make sure that the students were aware of the site that they were going to be working in. That was paramount before we even started thinking about companies, which is why the presentation that George went through was really so detailed, just to make the students aware of the sites. Then we introduced the idea that they are going to be forming companies, and the size of these companies varied depending on the groups. Anything between sort of 5, 10 at a maximum, 5, 6, 7, probably a good sort of number. And we started thinking about, with the students, the different roles that you would have within a successful company. And we broke it down into the ones that you can see on the screen there. And so we were asking the students, you know, well, what would a project manager do? Or, you know, they coordinate it. They're the ones that make sure that everything gets done. They're the ones that keep to the timelines. Okay. What about the marketing manager? What would their role be? So we talked through what the different roles were, from project managing to market managing to production manager to finance manager. So they were aware of the different types of roles. And then at that point, we got them to start thinking, and we did this one role at a time. Well, what skills would you need to be a good project manager? So perhaps in the chat while I'm talking this through, if you want to put anything up, because what we actually asked the students to do was to put it onto Post-it notes. Just write a little, you know, a few keywords or whatever phrases. What do you think would make a good project manager? What do you think would make a good marketing manager, production manager, finance manager? And we were really trying to get them to pull out those personal attributes, reflecting back again, perhaps to the communication skills that we'd talked about earlier. Once they had started, oh, sorry, I'm just reading the text there. Once they had started writing on the Post-it notes, we'd put the posters around the room and we invited them to come and put their Post-it note up to show what the skills were needed for different roles. And then as a group, we would go through them. And it became very clear that across the 4 roles, there were very common skills like communicating, like keeping this, be doing this, but there are also very specific ones. You know, if you were finance, you had to be good at numbers. If you were marketing manager, you had to be good at speaking to people because you might be the one that's doing the selling. If you were the project manager, you might have to be the one that's really good at organising. If you're the production manager, maybe you're the more creative one. So it was a real chance to unpick what it was. And then what I thought was the best thing about this approach is once we had it all up there with all the post-it notes and we'd gone through all the attributes and the skills needed for each post, we invited the students to self-select and place themselves where they thought they would fit best. So they were able to say, yeah, I think I've got the skills to be a project manager. You know, I can do this and I can do that. Or actually, I'm really creative, so I think I could be a good product design manager. I could really use my skills there. So the students physically moved themselves to different places around the room, self-selecting where they wanted to go. And this was the basis. They didn't know this at the time. This was the basis for how we would sort them into company groups. We allowed them free choice, but we basically said, you have got to have at least one person from the different stations around the room. So you need in your company at least one person who thinks they would make a good project manager, at least one person who's going to be a good marketing manager, and so on. So by the time they had formed their company, everybody already had a little bit of a role. It may be that they had two production managers and they may have to vote who's going to be the lead one and who's going to be the deputy or so on, but automatically they had a role, they felt they belonged, they had something to contribute. And also it meant that they ended up choosing people that perhaps they wouldn't all normally work with. You know, maybe in the marketing group, they didn't know anybody. You know, all their friends had gone to other groups, but they had to choose somebody. So it was a way of mixing up friendship groups and giving everybody a place to feel comfortable, believing that they had something to contribute because they knew they had some of the skills. So I know that was asked in the chat earlier, how we went about putting them into the groups, and that's how we did it. And we'd reference back to that at different times, you know, when the groups were sort of floundering a little bit on where they were going on different days, and we say, well, who's in charge of this bit? You know, who's in charge of the marketing when you're looking at doing your posters for your sales event, or if you're looking at costs, how much you're going to sell these products for? Who is the finance manager? Who is going to take responsibility? So it wasn't just a time-filling task. It really did resonate with the students, and it gave them a very clear role within the product, within the company there. So that's how we did it.
Thanks, Ingrid. I think as well, for me, it really helped to celebrate different skill sets. So it helped them to do that thing where they were looking at, actually, there are different jobs out there. What am I suited to? And actually within each group, they could celebrate that they got different skills and abilities to each other. They'd all got something to contribute. So it did work well. And like I said, because we worked with so many different kinds and ages and abilities of students, we adapted this, but there wasn't a group, was there, Ingrid, who couldn't manage this and access it. They actually all came up with really good ideas, and we had that discussion with them, so it did work well. Okay, so what we went on to do was, once they'd formed into their companies, we actually got them to think of a company name, and they were going to design a company logo. So before we actually went into that, we played a bit of a game with them, where what we were going to draw out of it later we will come on to, but we just thought everybody spends a long time sitting and staring at screens, so what we're going to flag up now is we're going to leave the logo game up and challenge you to see how many of those companies who've had key bits of their logos removed, how many of them you can name. And you've also got a chance to have a quick comfort break, quick cup of coffee, quick leg stretch. We'll start back at 3 o'clock. We will start back at 3 o'clock, so you've got enough time to actually go and make yourself a decent cup of coffee or tea, nip to the loo and so on. What I will do, I'm going to nip away for a second, but I will come back here. So if anybody's got any questions they want to ask, You can ask them on the audio, or you can ask them in the chat as well. But it's your chance that you won't be missing much. You will have a comfort break and a little bit of a go at a quiz. So hopefully that's okay. And we will start back in the session proper at 3 o'clock.
Hi, George.
Hi, Bobby.
This is great. I'm loving this. How did you? I'm seeing a lot of possibilities for adapting this for farm sites. And I think when my colleague Jo gets back, she'll probably say the same. She's a business teacher, so it'd be ideal for her too. How did you recruit the schools? Because 4 days off timetable is quite a lot, isn't it?
So we basically put it out as just a full sort of call. Was that my computer making noises there? Sorry. Yeah, we advertised it through our sort of Derbyshire Services for Schools contact, and what we actually we basically just explained to them what it was going to be. So I would say the special school that we work with probably had the easiest time because they've got a lot more flexibility in their timetable. The secondary school that we worked with doing screen printing basically selected a set of students who they were in year 9 who were pretty interested in sort of arts and creativity, but they wanted to kind of sort of nurture them a little bit along the way. So they just agreed that that's what they were actually going to do, and they organised it for the 30 students that took part. The graphics students were on a graphics course, so they actually used it basically as a work experience program. So they did it as sort of like real life work experience with active briefs. So both the digital and the graphics students did that. And one of the other groups we worked with were young people who were basically not in mainstream education. So they were on a tailored education program anyway, because they weren't in mainstream school. So they were able to just sort of adapt it around their timetable. I think where we won was it was funded, which is always really helpful, but also it ticked so many curriculum boxes, but so many enrichment boxes and employability stuff as well, that the schools were looking for a way to do this, and they actually got to work with people who were going to basically help them run it. I think that's kind of why we got over because actually getting students of this age out and about and doing things is notoriously difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult. Okay, I'm going to start us again now. So welcome back, everybody. We will have some more time for questions and stuff later. So I'm just going to, there you go, there's the answers. If there was any of them that were absolutely bugging you, the answers are up there. This quiz is, like I say, part of the leaders pack that we will be sharing with you. So you'll have this quiz and the answers because, and there's quite a few more than I've actually shown you today. What we drew out of this with the groups, it was kind of the first step in them actually having to work together. So we challenged them to come up with a company name, and we also challenged them to come up with a logo design for their company. And we talked to them a lot about what does it say about you, and how recognisable are these, and what colours get used, and why are they presented in this way. Liz, who was from Graphic Results, a graphic design company, actually in Belper, so within the World Heritage Site, worked with us on this project as one of the facilitators and artists. And what she's actually made for us recently during lockdown is a video that's also in the resources section. So you can just show that to your young people, and it actually talks to them about what makes good logo design. So that's available as a resource for you that you can use. So I won't go through that now, you can have a look at that in your own time, but just to say it will be in the resources area that we'll show you later. Okay, so the first day, very intense, very, very busy. We did it as a one-day block, but like we said, you could break that apart into a series of lessons, so you could slot it into a sort of lesson timetable if you needed to. So the second day was the site inspiration visit. So we normally started this as we got them to site, they obviously came to the various sites that they'd chosen to visit. We got them back into their company groups and we did them a quick quiz. So part of it was about what could they actually remember about the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site, and the rest was what can they remember about how to work effectively as a company. And again, that quiz is available for you in the learners pack. We then spent most of the morning on a bit of a heritage tour, sort of gathering inspiration in the sites that we visited. We visited Cromford Mills, Belper North Mill. We worked with Birdswood, the trip boats, and High Peak Junction, the railway workshops as well. And the sites were fantastic. They really sort of helped the young people to sort of really engage with the site, understand what they were about. And we did this differently with different groups, but they were basically gathering inspiration. So some of them had a bit of a worksheet where they were sort of doing a sensory exploration. Some of them were collecting facts. You can see on the bottom picture here and on the top one there, we actually made sketchbooks with a couple of the groups, and they were collecting stuff that they could tuck in and draw pictures. We did a lot of photography where they took pictures. You can see down here, some of the students were using sketchbooks anyway, so they were actually sketching into their own sketchbooks. For some of the groups, they've been given specific briefs of, we want you to design something that does this, or we want you to make something that does this. So you can see here, Rachel, who was the screen print artist that we worked with, gave them a demonstration to give them an idea that actually when you're screen printing, your design can't be too complicated. So she was reminding them of that process, linking them back to their brief that they had. The graphic design students have been challenged to actually design images for products that could be sold in the Cromford Canal shop. So some of them went out, and you can see in the bottom left-hand corner here, some of the students actually were going out and doing some market research. So they were actually asking people, you know, what sort of things would you want to buy? What would you like to see for sale here? What sort of things appeal to you? Some of the students who worked at Cromford went into the shop and they were looking at indicative prices, like how much does a postcard cost? How much does a bag cost? And doing some market research. So they basically, what we tried to do on the site inspiration visit was give as much responsibility to each company group as we could. We were there to basically facilitate for them. So we were trying to get them to sort of go, what do we need to get? What do we need to find out? What could we make? How could we make it? And we were there to sort of answer questions, but they were there to organise themselves. So they sort of had the opportunity to really fly and succeed, and they did. But there was also the opportunity for them to get a little bit frustrated, to get a little bit confused, and have to work through that together. And I think it's one of the things we don't often give our young people opportunity to almost sort of fail and work through their problems. We don't often provide them with that space and place. So I think that was a really nice thing about the sort of site inspiration visit. In the leaders pack, we've got sort of how you might organise a day, how you might want to speak to the heritage site that you're going to visit, how you might want to time things. There's a couple of videos we refer to about making your own sketchbooks. There's some worksheets on how you could sort of get them to collect information and facts. So you can adapt that to however you think's best. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually have a little bit of time with you doing a task. Okay, so we're going to let you immerse yourself either into the sort of role of a young person taking part in this project, or sort of start to immerse yourself in the idea of, actually, I might want to do this with a group of young people, whether you're from a school or a site or whether you're an artist. Okay, so we're going to actually give you 10 minutes. Sorry, there we go. To do a little bit of an activity for yourself. So we're going to give you 10 minutes, and you've got your own pencil and paper and crayons, hopefully to hand. And we also asked if you'd got sort of any images of your chosen heritage sites. Okay, so I want you to just try and get in your mind, I would want to be working in whatever art medium. I'd want to do photography. I'd like to do ceramics. I want to do screen printing. I want to do painting. I want to do digital work, any at all. And we're going to sort of challenge you now to spend 10 minutes yourself being a bit creative. So you can either design your own company logo. You could sit and sort of brainstorm potential product ideas. You could look at some of the images that you've got of your own site, or have a look at their website and sort of gather some sketches, so shapes and patterns and textures, colours or designs, or you could even sort of sketch out some initial product ideas. What I'm going to share with you in a second, which will run for the next sort of 10 minutes whilst you're having a little go at this, is this slide will keep popping up, which is like, this is what we're working on at the moment. But there's also, it's interspersed with some slides of some products that we showed as inspiration. So there's some ceramic products, there's some digital products, there's some screen printed products, just to, and there's the project briefs that they work with, just so that you can have a look at those. But I really want you to sort of take a little bit of time for yourself, so you can basically have 10 minutes to have a little bit of a sketch, have a little bit of a draw, have a little bit of a think. After this 10 minutes, we're going to go into some breakout rooms where we can sort of share some ideas and questions. Okay, so this is just 10 minutes for you to be able to sort of draw and sketch and do as you please. Okay, so I will stop sharing that one. Okay then, hopefully you've just had a nice time starting to sort of think a little bit about how this project might work for you, or you've just had a lovely 10 minutes actually being creative, hopefully. So what we're going to do now, just bear with me 1 second. I'm just going to jump back into our other presentation because we're going to go into some breakout rooms in a second. But what I want us to do is just explain what we want you to do while you're in the breakout room. So we're going to split into, I think, about 3 groups of us, and what we'd like you to do when you're in the breakout room is to introduce yourself and where you're from to each other. If you feel like it, if you've had a chance to do anything, if you want to, feel free to sort of share your ideas and sketches. You can either pop them in the chat or you can hold your sheets up or whatever. The breakout sessions won't be recorded at all, so you can feel free to do as you please. If you want to have a bit of a chat about what heritage site you think you might be working from, what art medium you might want to work in, what artists you might want to work with, what sort of school or college you might work with, and any questions. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and divide our team from the Environmental Studies Service up amongst the groups. So whilst I do that, you will get put into a group automatically in a second. So just before we do that, we're going to have a little bit of quiet contemplation time while I set this up. I was trying to set it up while the video was playing, but that just wouldn't work for some reason. So I'm going to do it now. So have a little bit of think about those, and then we'll have a bit of a chat together. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pass you back over in a second to Ingrid, who is going to sort of go through the sort of production day, what we actually did when they were producing, and we're going to show you some of the products that the students made. Am I sharing okay at that, Ingrid?
You are, thank you.
Lovely, over to you then.
Okay. So yeah, the production day, it was wonderful to have a whole day of production. First of all, I think, you know, often creative lessons are snatched a bit here and there, and you've got an hour and then you've got to wait a whole week before the next bit, but having a whole day ahead of you to design and make in whatever medium your group chose to do was a lovely way of doing it. The benefits of having an external artist working with the group was fantastic, really. It brought a real element to the day. It showed the students that actually you could have a job as this. You could do screen printing for a career. You could do graphic design for a career. So it showed the employability of the creative skills. It was also really helpful, as George said earlier, when we were asked to work with some of the digital students. It's like, that would be great, but we weren't experts. We didn't have those skills. The same with screen printing. I had the basics, but I'm not an artist. I didn't have full skills. So if you can get an artist on board working alongside the students and yourself, or if you're the artist, then you're okay. It was great. I cannot tell you how good it was to have artists along if possible. The other thing that was really important was the students were following a design brief quite often. So the graphic design students had been challenged with following a brief to create images that could be used on merchandise at Cromford, for example. So throughout the production and the design and the production they kept on referencing back to the design brief. Are we meeting our design brief? Are we doing what has been asked of us? When it came to the actual, should we go next slide? I'm forgetting I need to be a Chris Whitty as well here. Next slide, please, George. There we go. As well as creating the products, there was a lot of time given to the time and role management. So throughout the day, this is when the production manager stepped up and was making sure all the different processes were being done. If different people needed different materials, they were onto it. Really keeping an eye on the time. They had a whole day to produce, but that day could go very quickly, so they really had to focus. And some of the students really did get into the idea of a production line. I think George attended one of the sessions with some students, and they were making items out of clay. And they properly had a production line. I'm doing this cutting out and I'm passing on to the next person, and the next person doing this, and the next person's doing that. But unfortunately, George wasn't up to muster and didn't have the skill set in her first job, so was reassigned to a different part of production. And we just kept referencing it back to the whole idea that Arkwright, you know, and the other inspiring inventors and engineers of the time, they've started this factory system. So it was a real nice full circle for the students to think about what they were doing and how it referenced time in the past. As well as production of the actual physical objects, whether it was clay or line printing, some of the students, especially the ones who were making virtual products, if you like, were spending quite a little bit of time on the production day putting together PowerPoints and presentations, because they were working towards their sales day when they wouldn't be selling just a product, but they would be selling themselves as their company. And so they were putting together their PowerPoint presentation saying, this is what we would design. This is based on this market research. This is why we think this is good. This is how we would price pitch our product. We've done research comparing it to other products on the market and so on. So it wasn't necessarily just about the physical production, but also thinking about how we're going to sell this product as well. Next slide, please. So the digital products made by Chesterfield College students were really varied, and this was one of the fantastic things about the project, is students could go within certain constraints, but in any direction they wanted to. So within the same set of students, we had some students deciding to make a digital quiz that could be done on a phone or a tablet based on a visit to Cromford Mills. Some of the students decided to do design 3D printing, and you can see there a bookmark that has been designed thinking of the bobbins at the mill there. And then we had one student who actually really led his group. He flew and they kind of caught on behind him, but doing 3D modelling, virtual tours. And this student had been put on a different course actually, but throughout the course of this project, he actually changed the course that he was studying at college. He changed modules because he was so inspired by doing this kind of work and realised that he was really good at it. So that was a really lovely outcome for that particular student. So this model that we're seeing here is based on his photos that he took on the site inspiration day. So it's Belper North Mill basement with the pillars there. And yeah, he mocked this up completely just from a site visit, a few photos, and he just ran with it. And I think he kind of blew his tutors away as well. So that was a really lovely moment for everybody. So some of the ceramics products that were made by the 14 to 19 study group, they went to Belper Mill as well. And they had a full range of key rings, fridge magnets, coasters. One of the groups very early on, when we set about going to Belper, were insistent that we went to the river gardens because they were fascinated by ducks and could they take some bird food to feed the ducks on the day, and they just ran with the whole concept of the ducks, something we never thought of. So it was really lovely to see the students' own personalities coming out in the products that they made there. Next slide. So this was students from St John's Horton School, and they went with the line printing. They had an artist coming in and helping with learning about the process of printing like this. It was quite new to all of them. And you can see it's clearly inspired by the mills, for the mills. and this group was able to have a sale at the Cromford Mills itself. So they worked really hard on production day and produced an awful lot of products. More products you can make, more profit you can have. So they were flying as a successful company there. Any more? So yeah, more ceramics. So this was from the Alfreton Park Special School. They did a wonderful job of creating their own pieces. Some of the pieces, the top 3 pictures were quite large sort of wall hangings, and they were selling their products at their Christmas fair. And yeah, they were charging a considerable sum for their large wall hangings. I think it helped that a lot of the people that were coming to buy were friends and family, so not just the general public. But yeah, they created lovely things, and they didn't have access to using clay very often, and certainly not where you can glaze and fire it. So that was a great experience for the students. And I think this is the last one we're going to show. This is some examples of some work by the graphic design students. And they were tasked with designing products that could be sold in the shop at Cromford. And they came up with a huge array of designs. Have we got some up close there, George? I'm just going to see what's coming up in the presentation.
I'll share those in a bit.
Okay, that's fine. But we were blown away by their design. They were so professional, and this actually formed part of their coursework. So it wasn't an added extra that was squidged into the timetable. The college really embraced the project and made it part of their coursework. So yeah, just some ideas of what the students made. We were blown away. And George and I both proudly display many of the clay items on our fridges or where we put our cup of tea and so on. So all good stuff.
Absolutely. I use, it's on my desk now. It's travelled from work to home. So yeah, really pleased with them. So the final
Sorry, could I ask a question of Ingrid, please, George?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks for your presentation, Ingrid. It was very interesting. But one thing I couldn't see, and maybe I missed it because I blinked, was the production planning. How long did you allow the students to actually plan the production line and other bits and pieces and what they needed to do before they even started?
Okay, so we worked with the students on the 4 set days. So on the first day, the site visit, the production and the sales event. If the schools felt they needed to, and the students needed to, especially at the college where they did a bit more independent learning, they did work in their own time on planning what they needed for the production. And obviously the schools would need to make sure that they had the resources that the students needed for the day on the day. But with regards to planning in advance, not necessarily that much, because on the site inspiration day, they came away from there with quite a clear idea of what they wanted to do and how they were going to do it. So it really was just about the staff facilitating the students in having everything in place on the day.
Yeah.
Right. The thing I was just a little bit worried about, because I come from a production environment myself, is that obviously the planning side is more than normally the actual doing the production bit. So I'm just thinking whether the focus on that, so they actually break it down into detail about which bit needs to be done when and how, and then which bits can be sped up to actually then to improve it before they even started. And that's the bit I found a little bit missing in the presentation.
Okay, so I think probably, John, what we did as well was the first part of the production day, the first sort of at least an hour or so was them looking and deciding together, like, which things are we going to make, how are we going to do it. So for the screen printing ones, there was more time spent doing exactly what you've just said, which was the planning and prepping, than there was actually the making, because we talked to them about, if you're going to do screen printing, you need to cut out stencils, and for every single item you're going to need a stencil, and you're going to need this and you're going to need that, and how are you going to set it up and how are you going to organise yourselves. So for their one, there was a lot of time spent actually on the planning. For some of the ceramics stuff, it was a little bit more sort of trial by doing. So they decided they were going to make coasters. They decided they were going to make magnets or key rings or whatever it was their company was making. And they decided what designs it was going to have on it. And to start with, that group were each making one item each. And then we kind of were pausing and discussing with them. We were like, can we make this quicker? And we were letting them come up with the idea of, well, how could I make this slicker? Rather than them having to do it to start, it was that actually experiencing the slowness of the process or the difficulty of it, and then them coming up with solutions if they wanted to work in that way. So it was kind of, some of them spent longer on that than others. It very much depended on the group and the product. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much. That's the bit I just wanted to try to pick up on. So
yeah, no,
great.
that's
Thanks for the explanation, Ingrid and George.
Yeah, no, sorry, John, I was too excited by all the lovely products they made. I forgot to actually talk about how they did it.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So the final day we spent with them was the sales event. So like we've said, some of them were selling in person, either at Christmas fairs, on site, as part of a market stall. We had envisaged originally that we might end up with some groups who would actually put things into a shop on site. And we'd spoken to the sites about this, about the concept of actually making products, putting them in the shop, and then the shop actually just letting us know how many of each got sold. That's another way we could have done it. We didn't end up doing it that way with the groups that we worked with. But yeah, like I say, some of them were selling in person, some of them were pitching. So what I've included, you probably can't see it particularly clearly on the slide because it'll be quite small, but it is in the learning pack. We came up with a sort of scoring sheet. So a little bit like we would do, you know, if we're going to like let a contract or something, you need to be able to compare the different groups. And we shared this with them as part of their sort of planning and their production days, that actually, if you're going to present to our panel of judges, this is how we're going to judge you. This is what we're looking for. And we purposely made this a little bit more complicated to give them that idea of, actually, in the real world, you will be scored, you will be judged, you will be compared. And actually, you need to work out who's going to present which element, how are you going to present that, and how are you going to do it. So you can see at the top, up on the top left here, we've got sort of a panel of artists, experts and staff from the site. We've got some of the students here who've done posters, who've made posters up to present. We've got here the students who've done the screen printing. They did a market sale and presented, and we did a combination of both. The students from the special school, we just let them do their sale. They didn't do a pitch, and they actually looked at how much profit they'd made. These were rounding people up to come to their sale. We've got some presentations going on here and the market stall. But the idea was that they got that experience of actually presenting and actually trying to sell their idea, because one of the conversations we'd had with a lot of the artists who've been involved in the Great Place scheme is that idea that creativity is a job, it's employment, but you do have to be able to pitch and sell, and you do have to be able to get your products to market. So I'm just going to share these with you in a little bit more detail. So these were some of the graphic design students. So as we've said, they were challenged with making products that could feasibly be sold in the Cromford Canal shop, so from the Friends of Cromford Canal shop. So they designed some sort of greeting cards that you could also colour in on the inside, and some badges. This company had designed basically graphic design that could be put on a variety of products. So it could be on cards, postcards, cloth bags, and so on. This company decided they were going to design postcards and wall art. They'd looked at what was available in the shop, and they decided that that's what they wanted to do. So, and some of them got converted into sort of 3D printed paint your own fridge magnets, which was fabulous. And this group had done quite a lot of market research and had realised that the shop and some of the shops in the area had got quite a lot of craft beers for sale. And they decided that was quite a male orientated product. although I disagreed. And they decided that what they wanted to do was a whole load of beer mats. So they've designed beer mats in a gift pack that they would sell alongside the sort of craft beers that were available in the shop. So they'd really sort of tied in for the products that were already on sale and what could they put to go with them. We actually had quite a conversation with these about the idea of supplying the local pubs and the local businesses with sort of you know, site-inspired, World Heritage Site-inspired beer mats. So those are the 4 days. There's tons more detail than we can actually offer you this afternoon in the learning pack, which I'll share with you in a second, and in the resources. I just wanted to share this with you. There's some comments on here from the young people about what they actually thought of it, and there's a very short film which I'm just going to share with you while you can read that, with some comments from the students themselves about what they got out of it.
What I've enjoyed most about the project is learning business aspects, learning about the site, and being creative in what we want to produce. I particularly enjoyed working as a team. I haven't really worked as a team before, and it was interesting to get a wide range of ideas from people in the team.
I really enjoyed the final presentation, and I thought I did that really well, and I'm incredibly proud of myself. I am very happy with the final products that I have come out with. I think they're really good, and I hope that I can continue to do as good in future, if not better.
I enjoyed doing this project in a team for once, because it gave me a chance to see what other people could do and gain better understanding of what I can do from their ideas and using their resources and help with techniques. Also learned that doing more research on things such as the science, I had the chance to actually go there, visit it, and see things myself. It made it easy for me to change my design and come up with a new design within a very short period of time and finish it up to a high detail, as well as work with a team and get better at doing presentations.
So how have you found working as a team?
It's very difficult to begin with because everyone has conflicting ideas, and it's really hard to show what's going off in your head. But the moment all of you figure out what's going on, it's so good to have the payoff of the final design, knowing that you was part of it alongside the other creative minds that helped with it.
And how do you feel about being the winning Young Entrepreneurs group?
That was crazy. I was not expecting it, and it would be a great thing to show to the university that I want to go to. So.
Okay, which university are you applying to? Do you know yet, or which course?
Which course? Illustration.
Okay, fantastic. And I think these will go down very well.
Yay.
Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you. We've got quite a lot of different comments and stuff. There's some information on there. We found it was really quite a powerful process with the young people that we'd worked with. All of the staff, either at the schools or the colleges, all commented about the high quality of the work that they produced and how engaged they were in it, because it was very sort of learner-led and they got real ownership and control of it. How well they responded to that responsibility. So that was fantastic, because they weren't all like sort of like high-flying students by any stretch of the imagination for all of the groups. One of the things that I was particularly proud of, there was one of the students that we worked with was actually an elective mute, and the staff at the school had never heard him speak, but actually when they presented at the end, he actually spoke. He actually presented and talked about his product because he was so proud of what he'd done, which was fantastic. Ingrid's already mentioned we had students that actually moved on to different courses at a higher level because they were excited by what they'd done. And we had some really, really positive feedback about what we'd done and how we'd done it. So we're really proud of it as a project, and we really enjoyed working on it. But actually the artists that we've worked with and the heritage sites and the schools and colleges as well have enjoyed it as well. So we've got a little bit of time now. We've got literally 5 minutes. So just to say, we can help you to run this if you wanted to. So Derbyshire Environmental Studies Service You know, if you wanted to contact us to work with this, obviously the funding for this project has finished now, but we could help you to run this. But like I said at the beginning, you can access and download the resources for yourself. I've put the link on there. I'm going to email you separately with the evaluation form and the link to how to get to the resources, and I'll go to the website in a second. Sarah, if you can just drop the evaluation form into the chat for me at this point. What I would say with the evaluation form, if you can definitely fill in the first 5 questions, and that would really help us. The rest of them are very much around gathering sort of data and statistics about who's been involved in the project. So if you can fill it in, that's great. You can either do that now when Sarah's dropped it in the chat, or we will email to it and you can do it separately. But all of, like I say, all of those resources are available. Our contact details are on there. I'm just going to click that link very quickly and hopefully it will take you to. There we go. So on the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site website, it's basically got a little bit about the project, what we aim to do, and then there's the leader's guide there that's got all of the sort of leading instructions, so how you can time it, how you can organise it, how to do the different activities, and then all of the resources if you want to design a postcard, virtual visit, there's the PowerPoints, there's the voting sheets, there's all the stuff for the site visit. There's a video there which introduced all of the different sites along the valley so that they could choose and vote. We've got the scorecards, we've got reflection questions we used. I haven't mentioned these yet. Elaine, who was our fabulous ceramic artist that we work with, has made a couple of how-to videos. So if you haven't got an artist that you can access, she's done how to make clay tiles and coasters and how to make pinch pots very simply and easily. So there's those. And then this is our graphic designer, and this is the video about how you make your logos and how you do good logo design. So all of the resources are available on there for you to download, and they're all editable. So you can edit and adapt them for how you need to use them. What we would ask you to, if you don't mind, if you do decide to download them and use those, if you could just credit Derbyshire Environmental Studies Service and Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site, we would really appreciate that. That would be great. But you are welcome. They are very much copy left, not copyright. They are yours to take, adapt and use if you references. So that's it from me. The evaluation form is in the side there. We've just got a couple of minutes. If anybody's got any questions, you can ask them now and we'll include those. I appreciate we're nearly out of time. So if you want to hang on, that's great. You can ask us some questions. If you need to leave and get back to your day, thanks ever so much for taking part.
Hello, I've got a question.
Okay.
George, thank you. Can I just say thank you. I never dreamt this workshop would be as rich, valuable and productive as it has been. So you've completely taken me by surprise. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
And again, I really appreciate you handing over the resources. It's so important, you know, as a working teacher, that's generally what we want. So thank you. Just when you said, obviously the funding for the project's run out, but you could still help us. What exactly did you mean by that?
So what I meant was, we're here anyway, our contacts are here anyway. You can ask if you want some advice, if you want to ask us some questions, if you're like, how would you do this? That we're here for that. So drop us an email, give us a ring, and we can help you with that. If it was a big stage on from that, if you actually wanted us to come and work with your group and lead it like we have done, we would basically have to charge you at our normal sort of visit rate. But we could do that for you if you wanted us to, and we could discuss how that might work and how it would go. So, but in terms of being able to give advice and suggestions and how might I make this work at my place or with my school or with this artist, literally just drop us an email. That's what we're here for. We want to share this stuff. We're because we had the funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the Arts Council as part of the Great Place scheme. We were really keen that we had another group to work with and we weren't able to work with them because of lockdown. So we just wanted to share it and get it out there and get it spread. So yeah,
well, that's much appreciated. So just, I'm thinking practical terms, if I took this to my managers and said, you know, I mean, I'll be honest, I think I'd love to be able to run something like this, and I think the resources you've given us it really helps facilitate that. So how much would the school have to put, you know, is there kind of like an amount out of the budget I'd have to ask for in terms of a little bit of startup? If I say that we've got the time and the staffing, how much might I be asking my managers for?
I would suggest, as a teacher, you can run this. You can run this yourself. I would suggest if you can afford to buy in an artist for 2 or 3 days, I would definitely recommend that. So I would put in a ballpark £300–350 a day for an artist, because actually you're taking quite a lot of their time.
Yeah.
I would include transport. I mentioned this in one of the breakout rooms that I was in. I would include bus fees to get to a site, and I'd also include fees for actually getting into the site. So museum entrance fees, or the price of a decent heritage tour guide. I would include that in your cost, because I think the value that they can bring to the project is immense. So, but yeah, a bus, your heritage, your artist, and then we gave each group £10 startup. So for example, for the clay groups, we covered the cost of the clay and the firing. That was included in the artist's fee, but if they wanted magnets or keyring tops, or they wanted ribbon, they had to buy that from their own budget. So for the screen printing, we gave each group £10, and they had to say how many cloth bags they wanted, or how many envelopes they wanted, or how many pieces of cards, or how many calendar headers, or whatever. And they had to decide what they wanted to buy with their money. So it was basically a bit of floating petty cash that we could help them to buy stuff from. So I think, I mean, I can share with you the sort of breakdown. I mean, I can share separately the breakdown of the budget. I'm always happy to do that. When people are writing projects, the thing that takes you longest is like how to organise this and how much is it going to cost. So I've got absolutely, you know, it's public domain information. It's part of the lottery funding and the Arts Council funding. So if you want to contact me separately, I can basically tell you how much each thing cost. That
is wonderful. Thank you so much. In terms of sort of the cross-curricular value of this is it's amazing. So just thank you everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That's great. Yeah. Is there any other questions?
Not from me, Georgie. I'm not really I'm not a teacher at all. I'm obviously just volunteer, but I found it very interesting as well, just from the technical point of view. So I'd be more than happy to help out once Cromford Mill opens up. Obviously, Eleanor's the informal information officer. She's in listening at the moment. But I'd be more than willing to help out with that if schools wanted to come round and things like that. But thank you very much for your time.
That's fantastic, because it's such a, I mean, it's such a, all the sites are such rich, amazing sites, and to have those sort of experts on hand to support and work with the groups is fantastic. So thank you, that's brilliant.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Like I say, you can get in touch with us. I will drop everybody who's been involved today an email which has got the link into the resources and the evaluation form if you've not had a chance to fill that in this afternoon. And just thanks from all the team here for joining in and getting involved. And if you do decide to run a project, send us the pictures, tag us in, and we'll have a look at what you're doing, and we'd love to see it being shared. So thanks very much. Bye.